We are reviewing this week in our Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast what we've been studying through the book of Job. And we're just looking at the worldviews, the lenses by which each of the major players of this book view life and view suffering and view God. And we saw yesterday the worldviews of Eliphaz and Bildad, who both had this karma form of worldview. You get what you deserve. If you do bad things happen to you. If you do good things will happen to you. And there's no reason to discuss it any further. So it's a view of God who reacts to what we are like, who has no other purposes but to give us what we justly deserve, and there's nothing that goes any deeper than that. Well, we pick up on the next guy today, this Zophar, and we find him in chapter 11, and he is pretty much the same. Verse 6, he basically has an authority in himself, where Eliphaz had it in experience and Bildad had it in tradition. In verse 6, he says at the very end, he says, "Know that God forgets a part of your iniquity." He's absolutely certain that God has simply forgotten many of the bad things Job has done and could bring a whole lot worse things into Job's life. He's certain of that for some reason, but he has no reason to believe it except he believes it. Most people probably are like that to some degree. But what's his worldview? Down in verse 13, he says, "If you would direct your heart right, spread out your hands to him. If iniquity is in your hand, put it away, far away, and do not let wickedness dwell in your tents. Then indeed you would lift up your face without moral defect, and you would be steadfast and not fear, for you would forget your trouble as waters have passed by. Who would remember it?" Verse 17, "Your life would be brighter than noonday, darkness would be like the morning." In other words, look, Job, straighten up, realize that you're wicked, and God has brought judgment upon you, punishment upon you because of your wickedness. If you'll straighten up, if you'll do what's right, then your life would be brighter than the noonday. All this darkness would dissipate, and you would be living and just fine. That's his worldview. Same worldview as the other two. God is just in his bringing difficulties or good times into our lives. If we're having hard times, must be because we're doing something wrong. And so Job is needing to just straighten up. He'll be okay. That's his worldview. Well, what's Job's worldview? Well, we go to Job here, and we find that Job has a very similar worldview, but his point is he wants to argue with God. He wants to, in chapter 9, verse 3, "If one wished to dispute with him, he could not answer him once in 1,000 times." Now, he's starting to say, I need to talk to God. I need to have a conversation with him. I need to dispute with him, and he'll see it my way. In chapter 13, verse 3, he gets a little more intense about this. He says, "But I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to argue with God. But you smear with lies. You are worthless physicians. Oh, that you would be completely silent." Now, he doesn't like what these guys are saying, but he doesn't like what they're saying, not because he disagrees with their worldview. He has the same worldview, the same idea of a karma type of thing. God gives us what we deserve. His whole point is, I don't deserve this. And therefore, somehow, God has fumbled the ball in my life. If I could just sit down with him and prove my case, I could show God that he is mistaken in all of this. Verse 18 of chapter 13, "Behold, now I have prepared my case. I know that I will be vindicated." He's done his research. He's got it ready to go. He knows that if he could sit down with God, he could vindicate himself in all of this. We go over to chapter 16 and verse 21, and what does he say there? He says, "Oh, that a man might plead with God as a man with his neighbor." Again, he's on the same thing. God just misunderstands him. If God understood him better, then none of this would be happening. And then we go to chapter 23, and we find in chapter 23 that this is the very same thing that he's saying here concerning God, verses 3 and 4. He says this. He says, "All that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat, I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments." So even towards the end of all this dialogue with his friends, Job never changes his view. God is wrong. God has misunderstood him. God is doing something in his life that God should not do. And Job believes that he could straighten God out. And so his worldview is still the same as the others concerning the karma type of thing. But he also takes it to the idea that God is just wrong. The other ones didn't say God was wrong. They just said God was giving Job what he deserved. But Job goes further. And in some ways, he's in worse shape than the other guys because his view of God is so minimalistic that he believes he can teach God a lesson or two. What a horrible view of the Lord and of life. And yet, sadly, too often, we can come up with many of the same things. Well, it's not going to end that way. The book of Job ends in a much better place. And we're going to look at that tomorrow as we look at one final time at the book of Job. I hope you can join us.